Hello and welcome to Iberia. This is the second of the Tinto map boasts by Pavia, and the guy that you see on the thumbnail is in fact Pavia. I got a DM from Johan about an hour or so ago, basically giving me a couple of pictures that Pavia had sent to him because he wanted to be on the thumbnail, and wish granted. These are your map posts. This is what, yeah, of course. So what we have here is, this is about as equal to EU4 as it is to EU5. The borders of Iberia are remarkably unchanged between the century. Partly due to the Black Death, partly due to the fact that Granada was one of the first nations in Europe to adopt firearms, so they punched well above their weight. They were, let's just say, they're a little bit more richer, like more, not richer as a whole than Castile, but they were certainly more densely populated, and yeah, they were just a bitch to conquer, really, let's be honest. But anyway, let's get into the map post and see what Pavia has for us today. Welcome to the second post of Tinto Maps. Really pleased about the great reception that the first one had last week, and also about the great feedback we received. Just so you know, we have more than 70 action points from it that we'll be implementing soon in-game. That's huge. That is 70 things that people have said, yo, this Dutch border right here, this is maybe potentially wrong, or this forest here should be a wood because it wasn't as dense or something. Oh, anyway, today we'll be unveiling the map of Iberia in the super secret project. So let's start showing maps without further ado. And actually, the first thing is something that I actually was not aware of at all: Morocco owning Granada. Like the very, very tip of Granada, like the Rock of Gibraltar, basically. That's something I was completely unaware of. So, hey, I have learned something this day. And, Morocco being on the Iberian Peninsula. Also, looking further north, we have, Majorca owning, is that Roussillon? They also own a little city-state up in France itself, and we can see a bunch of the French appanages, Foix, Armenier, Camingis, I nailed that one, etc. Very nice. And Portugal is blue. They should be blue. That is the correct thing to do for them. They are a monarchy, so blue is the right colour. So, the situation in 1337 shows a strong crown of Castile under the rule of Alfonso XI, who's overcome the problems of his troublesome minority. To the east, we have the Crown of Aragon. It's named that way even if it currently doesn't appear like that on the map, because it's too small. If it spreads out a bit, then the Crown of will join in, just like it is for Castile there. Which is fighting for hegemony over the Mediterranean. An offspring of it is the Kingdom of Majorca, ruled by a cadet branch of Aragon since half a century ago. That also has a couple of northern possessions centered on Perpignan and Montpellier. To the north, the Kingdom of Navarre is ruled by a French dynasty, its titular Queen Jean, a member of the Capetian dynasty, being married to Philippe, Lord of Evreux. To the west, Portugal has a tense relationship with Castile, with a war being fought during 1336. To the south, the Nasrid dynasty holds power in Granada, backed by the Marinids of Morocco, who have a foothold in the peninsula centered around Algeciras and Ronda. And yes, Andorra is a starting country. Yo, I did not even recognize the fact that Andorra exists right up here. That's going to be one of the trickiest starts in the game, I feel. That is actually kind of wild. Though before we move on here, I do want to have a look just real quick at another map. Now, obviously we've seen this map before. It's the map of the HRE that we were shown quite recently. And some enterprising young intelligence people have discovered something here, and we're going to zoom in. Zoom and enhance, except enhance doesn't really work that well. We're going to be zooming, we're going to be going down, and we're going to be looking right here at the Italian peninsula. Because if I bring up this here, what is this? who owns this little square of San Marino arid land? Are we going to actually have a San Marino, or is this just a quirk of, you know, maybe the Urbino? No, it wouldn't be Urbino because they're there. Maybe somebody owns this. Maybe the Papal States themselves owns this, and that's maybe gonna be a thing that will have San Marino. Who knows? And I do have to credit Kirkian for actually finding that, because that's kind of crazy that he found that on a whole ass map that looked like this. So good job to you, and maybe we're getting San Marino. I think that's roughly where it is, right? I feel like that's not a stretch. But anyway, let's go back to Iberia, where, yes, we have the lovely Andorra being existent, which is very cool. Looking at the locations, some enterprising young fellow can also go and count these, and we can compare them to Iberia in EU4, which is certainly nowhere near as many, but that's a given at this point. I do like that not Appalachians, not Alps, they are the Pyrenees Mountains. I do like that the Pyrenees Mountains are a little bit more broken up than just a straight line as we have in EU4. Holding just the mountains on both sides, you know, you're gonna let gaps through, so you need to also be prepared to protect the internal areas, the passageways through the Pyrenees. We're aware that some locations could be added here and there, and this was one of the first maps that we created, and we weren't completely sure about the location density we would like to have in the game. Some examples of possible locations that we'd like to add during a review would be Alicante, Tarifa, Alcobendas, Tordesillas. I feel like this one, just on name alone, should be included due to the whole, you know, Treaty of Tordesillas issue. I feel like this one definitely should be in. Fraga and Mont Blanc. Mont Blanc as well. Isn't that the biggest mountain in France? Is Mont Blanc? So it'll be north of the Pyrenees here. Very Iberian. Maybe I'm just wrong. It's a different Mont Blanc. Also, you might notice that Zaragoza is named Saragossa. This is not final. It's because we're using it as our testing location for the dynamic naming system, as it has different names in Spanish, Catalan, English, French, and Arabic. Very cool. I love dynamic names. I love them. I think that is fantastic. My opinion on them is basically, as long as it is localized into a legible Latin script, then all place names should be localized into the culture that owns the place. So, for example, if we're looking at China, obviously they don't use the Latin script, so I don't want the game to be localized to using I have no idea what their script is called, but you know, you know what I mean. Chinese characters. I don't want that, but I do want it to be localized into what they would call those places. So that's basically where I stand on it, you know? Here we have the provinces. This is a lot more similar and close to what we have in EU4, of course. But still, I feel like there are more provinces here than we do have in EU4. It is quite similar. Actually, I think maybe Portugal has lost some provinces. Alentejo is quite huge. And if we have a look here, Malaga also... Granada is like 3 provinces big. So maybe there's actually a little bit that has been lost. There's a lot more granularity in the north. But again, provinces on this game, I don't feel is as important to be, you know, more granular, because obviously we're playing on the location scale with army movement, when that's kind of the big issue when you're looking at granularity. But yeah, no, this is the provinces map mode. Although it looks like a bit of the modern provincial borders, take into account that these are based on the provincial reform of Francisco Javier de Burgos, which was also inspired by the cities and provinces that were accountable for the Servicio de Millones during the reign of Philippe II. Also, please don't focus on the province names. The language inconsistency is because we're using it as a testing ground. fair enough. I will not be commenting on something I'm completely ignorant of anyway. Don't even worry about it. We have the terrain. We have cold, arid over much of Iberia, Mediterranean on the opposite coast to the Mediterranean. We got oceanic. We got some arid. What is these? What are the dark green ones? Continental, right? Bloody Arctic. We got Arctic in the Pyrenees. I mean, I understand that they may be cold up there, but maybe Arctic might not be the best term for it if we're gonna get that in most mountainous regions. I feel like that's that's an interesting decision. Okay. Looking at the terrain, though, we've got lots of flatlands and plateaus. That is one of the big issues with Spain, or Iberia, I should say. In EU4, it is very much all hills, or just tons and tons of hills, when that's not really the case. It wasn't super hilly. It's just kind of raised up. So we got lots of plateaus here in the center, got some mountains there, of course. And Granada is also protected by its lovely little mountainous areas as well. But yeah, no, that's very, very cool. Moving on, we have the terrain as well here, whether it's grassland, sparse, woods, and forests. So, woods, I feel like I really need to explain this to people, because, I don't know, people just don't seem to get it. And me being an enlightened individual, I know the difference between a forest and a wood. So a wood is it's a bunch of trees in a location. A forest is even more trees in the same area of location. It's just way more dense. It's all about, the canopy and the density, and if you look up, can you see the sky, or do you just see more green? It's totally, I knew this the whole time. And I'm letting you guys know. Clearly, it's very important information that I feel should have been imparted to you. So that's that. Iberia has one of the most complex terrain feature distributions in the entire world. We've also discussed this week that we're not very happy about the vegetation distribution, which will be reworking, so feedback on this topic is especially very well received. So this is the vegetation here. So yeah, if this looks wrong to you, then and you know about 1300s Iberia, and you're like, whoa, hold up. There was no wood here. This was a forest. The trees are way more dense than this is the place to comment that. Because again, the previous Tinto maps had 70 changes made because of comments. I'm sure this is just equally as ripe for updates. Moving on to the cultures, we don't just see a unified Spanish culture. We see a lot more granularity, I guess. We've got Asturo-Leonese, so Asturias and Leon, Galician, we've got Basque, Aragonese, we've got Catalan, lots of Catalan along the coast there, and Portuguese. And of course, because Andalusia used to be the one that owned pretty much the whole peninsula before the Reconquista, Andalusians are still very much present throughout the entire peninsula, as well as Basques are also minorities in various areas as well. Very cool. I like seeing this. This is cool. We've also got what is that? Could that be like Languedocian, like Languedoc kind of thing? And then we've obviously that it would be Gascon. Very cool indeed. Zenati down here in the bottom. Don't know if you can see that very well. Never heard of them either, so that's something. Quite standard cultural distribution here based on the different languages of Iberia. Asturo-Leonese was still a language back in that time, although close to being opaqued by Castilian after 1 century of joint ruling. The Andalusi represent not only the Muslim inhabitants of Granada and the Strait of Gibraltar, but also the Mudéjar communities spread throughout much of the territory. What I want to point out here, pointing out the specifics of the language makes me think that obviously we know language is going to be a thing when we look at markets. Every market has its market language, and language, I think, is going to play a big part in culture as well. And them just pointing out this, I feel, is a bit of a clue. Are we going to get language similarities between various cultures? Potentially. Is that going to help assimilation? Potentially. Very interesting stuff. For religions, of course, the Reconquista has just, well, been in the process of happening for a little while. So there are still quite a few Sunni Muslims across Iberia. And it's called Sunniism instead of just Sunni, which is certainly a choice. The Sunni populations here match the Andalusi pops of the previous map. Although it's not shown in the map mode, there is other important religious community in Iberia, the Sephardic Jews, who inhabit several cities and towns. Very cool. Looking into the raw goods now. It's also a map mode that they'll be revisiting next week, and feedback is also very welcomed. A curiosity, for the first time in a Paradox Grand Strategy game, there is a Mercury resource in Almaden. I don't know where Almaden is, but if you find the Mercury, you'll know where that is. But yeah, I don't really have much to point out of like note. We've got, wine, we've got dyes, there's some lead around. Apparently there is some mercury around. But yeah, the goods distribution is very... Oh, hang on. Rice. I was not aware that Europe had rice in 1337. I thought that was not a thing for until much later. That is certainly interesting. I would love to hear some comments about that. If you have any knowledge about, European rice, in the early Middle Ages, not early Middle Ages, but the early modern period, then yeah, let me know, because I am very curious about this. I was not aware that rice would be a good that we would be seeing in Europe this early. And then finally we have the markets. We have the Sevilla market, we have the Barcelona market, and if I zoom in, we have the Algezate market, which is coming over from North Africa, and the Fez, yes, that would be the Fez market, as well, coming over from North Africa. Very cool. Barcelona market there. We have, obviously, the Aquitaine market. And yeah, there is no... Up here in the north of Iberia, it looks like it's kind of ripe for either another market to take over, like the Aquitaine market looks like it could probably steal a few of these northern provinces. Barcelona could obviously take a few of them as well. It just takes a little bit more infrastructure build-up. Your roads potentially would help with that. But yeah, no, that is very cool. For sure. I remember in an earlier dev diary when Johan was explaining, when he was playing as Portugal, sometimes he wanted to create his own market, and sometimes he wanted to remain in the Castilian Sevilla market, because the goods that he was bringing in would get sold to the Castilians, who were, had workers requiring those goods to, and he would make quite a large profit from that. Whereas if he made his own market, of course, he'd have more control over it, but it would be less profitable, I guess. I don't know in the long run, short run, but he would have less profit from selling it to Castilian merchants. So yeah, no, interesting dynamics there. The current distribution of markets, please take into account that it's based on the current gameplay status of the system, and that won't necessarily be its final status. We tested in previous iterations having the market centres in Lisbon and Burgos, but they weren't working as we wanted, and that's why we only have market centres in Sevilla and Barcelona. As the markets are dynamic, it might be possible to create a new market centre, so a Portugal player might want to create a new market in Lisbon after some years, although having access to the market of Sevilla is juicy if you get enough merchant capacity on it there. Basically, this is what Johan had said in a previous dev diary. And then finally, the final map of today is the population distribution. And this, I think, is a very interesting one. Can I remove this thing at the bottom? It doesn't look like it. But yeah, there is the population here, 176,000 there in Granada. or Granada, I think their capital is called. But if you compare that to, for example, Madrid, and we've got nothing coming even into the hundreds of thousands. So, like I said, the population density in the south was so much higher. In Sevilla itself, we've got 117,000 living in the city of Sevilla. Moving over to Barcelona and Valencia, we've got pretty high populations. But yeah, no, this is certainly interesting numbers. If you think any of the numbers are wrong, again, those can all be put in the comment section of this dev diary, and changes can and will be made if you cite your sources. So yeah, that is all we have for today. Next week, we'll be traveling to France. Okay, getting the French region is going to actually be very interesting, of course. I think every region is bloody interesting, let's be honest. But I think France is one of those key areas in the game that is going to be pretty influential, I feel. So it'd be interesting to see that. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this dive into Tinto maps, and thank you very much to Pavia, both for sharing it with us and for the pictures. I had fun. I hope you guys did too. Leave your comments in the comment section below. And upon this forum post, if you have any things that you need to say, you should definitely go and look at it. The link is in the description. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, and bye-bye.